Welcome to the Pooch Parenting Podcast, a podcast for parents with dogs. I'm Michelle Stern, a certified professional dog trainer, mom, and former teacher. Living with kids and dogs at the same time can feel like a circus. I know because I lived it too. Join us as we interview a variety of experts and parents to discuss topics that will make parenting with dogs easier, safer, and less chaotic. Also, you can love living with your dog again. I'll always keep it real, which might even mean that you hear the messiness of life in the background on occasion, but at least you know you're not alone. Welcome to episode 12 of the Pooch Parenting Podcast. Today I talk with Ruby Leslie about dogs who chase. They chase kids, they chase the cat. As if parenting isn't hard enough, it's even harder when you have a chaser on your hands. So we talk about strategies to keep your cat safe and your kiddo safe and to help your dog be more successful. Hope you enjoy. Hi, Ruby. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I'm so excited we finally get to talk.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm very, I was looking forward to this because we've been talking now for I think a year or so or more.
Probably.
And supporting each other on social media and helping each other out, but we haven't actually formally done a podcast or anything to support each other. So I'm really happy about this.
Yeah, me too. I know. I'm really excited about it too. And what I especially love is that you have a unique perspective, being that you are a dog trainer, but a cat owner as opposed to a dog owner. So you understand what it's like to live with cats and to put up with some of the shenanigans that cats can bring up in daily life. But as a dog trainer, you understand that sometimes cats make wonderful dog toys. And so we're going to talk about today in this episode about tips for parents who've got dogs and kids who may have a cat in the house, how to deal with it when dogs chase either the kids or the cat. And you've got some great pointers for that. But in the meantime, why don't you introduce yourself and then we'll dive in.
I am a fear-free veterinary professional. I'm elite certified for that. So that means I've gone through four different courses. I'm fear-free groomer certified. I'm fear-free shelter certified. Low stress handling certified. I'm doing my canine behaviors diploma with the International School of Canine Psychology. I have loads of qualifications in dog cognition, shelter welfare, training, and positive reinforcement stuff as well. And of course, I am owned by 3 cats. I'm also a writer for Edition Cat magazine, and I find that having the perspective, like you say, of being a dog trainer who has cats has really helped me write articles and have this opportunity to share what it's like to have cats and to also train dogs. And I'm an editor for the Chengdu Panda Base, so I'm busy.
You are certainly busy.
I like it. It keeps me out of trouble because if I don't do it, I get in trouble.
Okay, well, let's keep you out of trouble. I'll keep you busy.
Yay.
Okay, so I want you to imagine a tired, frazzled parent, young dog, chases everything in sight. And this parent is worried about the dog getting itself into trouble or possibly causing damage to either the pet cat or to the child. So what do we do? Where's the first place to start with this?
Well, I actually just helped a client with that. But they had a really big problem. The dog was okay when the kids are on the floor playing, but the issue was when they were holding the kid, the dog would try to jump up and attack them because their body language was changed. And so that was a really big issue. And so what I did with them is I had them hold the kid and then find it really simple games. Because again, parents, you don't have time to do this sort of stuff. You don't have time to do more in-depth desensitization or DSNCC, I'll call it like that because I can't always say it, programs, because you just don't. You have to take care of your kids, you have to take care of your dog, you have to take care of your husband. Anyway, so they were holding the child, they were screaming or they're crying, and the dog would try to jump on them because the dog is hyper aroused because of the noises. And so we had to do a DSNCC program to noises before we even worked towards them moving around.
So I'm going to stop you here real quick and just clarify, because a lot of the people who are listening to this don't know what those letters mean.
Yes, thank you.
What we're talking about is desensitizing a dog or counter conditioning a situation. So essentially the goal at the end of the day is to help the dog find input, whether that's sounds from kids or sights of kids wiggling around, to turn those into non-issues
Yeah.
and to help the dog feel better when it
Yeah.
sees or hears things that it used to respond poorly to. So we
Exactly.
can often do that by pairing kid noises with treats or with fun activities like tossing a ball, so that the dog will then see the child as the trigger that good things will happen, as opposed to something that is frightening.
Sorry, apologies. Sometimes I go into trainer brain and I forget that other
That's okay.
people
That's
don't
what I'm here for. I'm a
exactly.
translator.
Yay. Um, they you're changing your dog's emotions from negative to a positive. So they're saying like the trigger would be the child. A trigger would be influence on the dog that might change its behavior.
Mhm.
So they're going to see the child as like, oh my God, well, I see a child and they're crawling on the floor. Oh, I'm going to get some treats now. Or I hear a child crying. Well, I'm going to get treats. So you have changed that negative hyper arousal where the dog's in a, prey drive mode into actually, hey, I'm going to be a calm dog. I'm going to be chill. And I think that's really what our goal is. And Eileen and Dogs just wrote a huge article about how we can't play the sounds. If you have like a sound of a baby crying and you give treats to your dog, you shouldn't play it from your phone because it distorts the sound.
Mm.
You should play it from your speakers,
Mhm.
because and that's the same thing for like thunder or any sort of noise that your dog is scared of. Because if you play it from your speakers, you can get like the underground frequencies more
Mm.
than
Good.
you can if you play it from your phone.
Great tip. Love that.
And so what I recommended is that they would play the noises of a baby crying and drip feed their dog food, like really like in a snuffle mat, like really keep it super calm, because you have a puppy who is, very excited, wants to chase the babies, wants to jump on the babies. But now when the baby cries, they think, okay, I'm gonna go on my mat,
Mhm.
or I'm going to go find a game. I'm not going to be jumping. I'm not going to be, thinking that when the baby cries, that's a prey. So that was something that we worked on, and so we got the dog DS and CC to some noises, and then we worked where the mother was holding the baby and walking around her house, tossing treats to the dog, and for one part of the game, and the other game is the dog had like a distance boundary game where they're like on their mat, and the mother was walking around the room with the baby in their arms, and then the dog stayed on the mat.
Mm.
And these are really important things that the dog is showing calm behaviors, or you're giving an alternative behavior. So if you
Mhm.
know the dog is really excited, because puppies, they love the world and they want to explore the world through their noses and their mouths, but they sometimes forget, and that's why mouthing is a big issue as well. And so when you have a baby in your arms who's crying, you can't handle a mouthing dog. You're just, as a parent, a mother or a father, you're like, oh my God, the baby has to go in the room. I have to calm my baby down. I can't handle a puppy who's now mouthing my baby's feet.
Right.
And so that's where having that game was where, okay, if I have treats and reward stations around my home, I can grab some food, give the dog something else to do, take the baby safely into the room, and then you have a calm situation for the parent, the child, and the dog. So that was one thing that I did.
That's really good. I want to go back to one thing that you talked about there, and we were talking about changing emotions. And um, I think the main point that we need people to understand is that dogs repeat behaviors that they practice.
Yes.
And so if a dog is given the opportunity to continue to chase the kids, or to continue to jump on a parent who's holding the baby, or to continue to sniff at a baby who's on the floor, which is not a safe thing to happen anyway, then the dog will continue to do those things. And so what you're talking about is switching it around so that the behavior we're asking them to repeat is actually playing a human designated game. So
Yes.
you are taking the direction instead of letting the dog take direction, which is awesome. And then second of all, we're rewarding. I'm wearing the shirt right now. It says reward your dog. But the idea is that we want to give the dog as many rewards as possible so that they can make positive associations with making the right choices. So,
Exactly.
good.
And
Okay.
I think that's the same thing, the way I look at it is I like to drink coffee. I like percolated, snobby, dark roast coffee. And the more that I drink it, and I think you know very well, I love to cook because I like good, solid food.
Yes.
Um, but I like healthy food.
Well, you and I share recipes all the time.
We
We have that
do.
in common.
I'm doing cooking because it's reinforcing to me.
Yes.
I'm drinking coffee because I enjoy it. The dog chasing the child or chasing the cat is something they enjoy
Yes.
because it's rewarding. It is an instinctual, natural behavior for a dog. A dog is a predator. We forget that. We think, oh, they're cute, they're part of our children. They're not a human child. They are a dog. They have teeth, they have claws. They are a natural predator. That's when you take your dog out for a walk. They're going to try to eat the birds. They're going to try to eat the mice. They're going to try to eat the rabbits or the squirrels in the trees. And some dogs have higher prey drive levels due to breed characteristics or genetics due to where they grew up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'll bring the Thai dog into the example. There's a lot. I work with a Thai shelter, and I've been helping consult them for a very cheap price because they're, you know, a shelter. And a lot of their dogs try to eat cats because, and they also rescue cats as well. So they have to walk their dogs on muzzles because the dogs have been foraging for all their lives. So they see anything that moves is now my game to eat it.
That is such an interesting concept. Let's pause there for a second. I'm actually thinking about our family's trip to Thailand. I think it was 2 years ago. We went over Christmas vacation and we went to an elephant sanctuary where they were rehabbing and rehoming elephants that had been in the tourist trade and had been horribly mistreated their whole lives. And so this place had all this land and they were giving elephants a social life with no abuse and nobody was going to ever ride them again and everything else. And every elephant had their own caretaker who followed them around and made sure they were safe and didn't get into trouble. And they got to live in these family groups. But at the same property, because they had so much land, they ended up also being a sanctuary for stray dogs and for cats. And it was really interesting because a lot of the dogs were loose around the property and they visited with the tourists like me. You know, the money that we paid to visit this property went towards conservation, and I felt really good about that. But they also accepted donations to take care of the dogs and to take care of the cats. But the cats had to live in these big enclosures that were fully 100% fenced in, the tops, the sides, everywhere, because the dogs were loose and the dogs were extremely interested in these cats. And it's interesting because in some places, street dogs really are not interested in cats because they have enough food to eat from the village garbage dumps and tourists who feed them. But at this particular location, where it was a very structured natural environment, they got dog food, but they still needed to set up a management system to prevent the dogs from chasing the cats because they were still in that seeking mode. They were in that hunting mode because they just came from the mountains, which were really nearby. It was a really interesting thing, but I think that then ties in. Okay, so if these cats were in these big enclosures and they were really cool, they like had tree branches and the cats could climb on them and they had really nice enrichment opportunities. It makes me think about the family cat in a home that may or may not have a safe place to go. And since you live with cats, and I know that you take a really active role in making sure that your cats have an enriched life, can we just talk about that for a minute and how to set up a safe place for a family cat where there's a dog and a child? Because children do torment cats if they can get away with it. And we need to make sure that doesn't happen. So can we talk about what it looks like to make life safe for a cat who lives in a family?
Yeah. I want to bring one small note in. A lot of dogs from overseas, from like Korea and Thailand, are being adopted in Canada and North America and the UK.
Yes.
And so we need to bear in mind that a lot of shelters don't have the knowledge base that we have, because these dogs are not used to being in a home.
Right.
B, they're used to scavenging for their food, and they're used to hunting. So you're bringing these type of dogs who never had any formal training or any sort of, use for being in a home, and you're putting them in a home with a cat. And so the cat is like fair game.
That's terrifying.
Exactly. And if you put them in a home with a baby, the baby's fair game.
That's also terrifying.
Exactly. And so this is where, if you are going to adopt a dog from overseas, please vet them out. Make sure that they have standards in place. Make sure they're telling you the enrichment of their shelter, how the shelter's housed, and how the dogs are cared for. And also ask, how's the dog with babies, how's the dog with other animals, how's the dog with cats, because a lot of these places will say, oh, they're fine. They're not fine. So
So, would it be better to just make the assumption that when you are adopting a dog from an overseas shelter, that it's not going to be fine and then be pleasantly surprised later? I mean, I
yes.
would rather have people be prepared than be sabotaged and suddenly find out that, because a lot of people are adopting from these other countries because it makes them feel good that they're rescuing this dog
Yeah.
that needs them. And that is absolutely the case, and that's fine.
Yeah.
There are some issues which we could talk about another time about there are dogs in our own country that can be rescued. So there is that whole other conversation. But
Yeah.
assuming that you are trying to do the right thing,
Yeah.
and you are bringing in a dog from another country, there is no judgment in that at this point.
No.
But what I want to say is I would much rather you just plan for the worst and hope for the best. Because if you've got cats, if you've got maybe you have pocket pets like hamsters and rats or a ferret or whatever
Yeah.
that are allowed in certain places, that these creatures, it may be like an open hunting season
Yeah.
if you're not careful.
Exactly. And so I think this is where I'm not judging anybody. Like I lived in China for 8 years, and I'm very well aware of the animal welfare challenges in these locations. But if you adopt a dog from that country or any country, make sure what bowls are they eating from, what environment they live in, and duplicate that environment in your home, and then have them in a safe room so they have a safe room, and then slowly introduce them. But what
Okay.
I'm going to go into now how to make a safe room for your cat, because I have 3 cats and I brought them back to me from China. I rescued them all. And because I worked so hard with these cats, it kind of taught me that I can't have a dog. These animals deserve my time because they've gone through so much. So I use other people's dogs as my dog fix.
I want to pause one second here, because you said something that I think people may or may not realize is a trigger. So dogs get excited by motion.
Yes.
And so when you mention that if you were to make any kind of sudden noise, even if it was an accident, like dropping something, and she were to run across the house to go hide, that in and of itself would trigger probably the majority of dogs to go chase her.
Yes.
Because a long time ago, we had 2 cats. One of them was very much like a dog. She was a black and white cat who played fetch and was very funny and social and calm. And she played with our dog, and she never ran away from our dog. And then the other cat was a blue cat, both of them rescued from the shelter. But she was a beautiful bluish cat, and she was the epitome of a cat. And she was very moody and made decisions. Yes, you can touch me now, or no, you cannot touch me now. But she always ran away from the dog, which made the dog chase her every time. So it was just a really interesting dichotomy, because on the one hand, I would think, oh, my dog is fine with cats because she plays gently and wonderfully with Jasmine, my black and white cat, but she chases the heck out of Emma and wants to go get her. And that's because Emma was always running. So I do think it's worth noting that a fearful pet may cause more challenges than it solves, that it's running away for safety. And that is the trigger that's making the dog chase it in the first place, which is also similar to a running around happy, playful toddler. Same problem, right? The motion is what attracts the energy of the dog.
Exactly. I think dogs have fantastic peripheral vision. And so the way that they capture motion is, in through their vision. I forget the details of it right now in my brain. I have it somewhere else, but their mind, their senses, their eyes, their nose, I think that is triggered by motion. It's triggered by the smell of motion. If they know, okay, you're going to go run, well, I'm going to chase you. And that's why when I have a dog who's fearful on a walk, or like, let's say they see another dog and they start barking and lunging, I always say, go for a run, because that dog is then able to run away from, the flight response. But they also run away because dogs like to run. And, you've given the dog an escape route for the fearful dog, or the dog who's going to lunge or react or whatever you want to do. But when you have a fearful cat like Marmalade, who has to hide in a box in my closet, and I made her little boxes on my clothes and she couldn't smell me and all sort of stuff. And I'll go back to that. When you have her and she's around the house, and if my family comes in, she is running. She's not just she's full-fledged running. If I had any type of dog in this environment, they would be like, game on. I will go after that cat. And so this is where it's knowing the type of breed of your dog. It's also knowing the type of personality of your cat. And so what I've done with them is I've had my room set up as like a safe spot. And so in my room is their safe room. And you can have any specific room in your house. You can have a cat room. You can have anything. I'll have my room as their safe room because that's where I stay and they can smell me. And cats and dogs like that sense of familiarity. They okay, I can smell like my mother cat. That's how cats view us, as mother cats or father cats if you're a dude. Um, and so like they view versus dogs who know that you're a little bit more different. But because we have that same smell in us, we're part of the social group. And so when I'm in my room, like I have a box for her in the closet. I have a box for her on top of a dresser, so she has a perch. I also have a little blanket on my bed for Spark to, because he's 17 pounds. I have a bin for him to jump up and go on the bed. And I also have everything laid out easy for Patches to, as well, have a little safe spot for him. So then that way he feels secure. So I have my safe room as my bedroom.
Can I ask you a quick question real quick?
Yes.
So I know you don't have a dog and I know you won't have a dog because of your cats and you're respecting their needs, but I'm going to pretend that you did have a dog.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times people bite off more than they can chew. And you happen to know what you know, but a lot of people don't know what they don't know. And so they find themselves in the situation where they do have a fearful cat or a fearful child and a dog that likes to chase things. So in that particular case, let's imagine that. Would you then have a baby gate at your door so that the cat can flee over the gate and the dog is stopped there? So for example, the dog hits, or maybe in the hallway leading to your bedroom. So we can even give a bigger barrier or buffer zone to your room. So maybe on the corridor on the way to your bedroom, there's a baby gate. The cats know they're good jumpers. Swing, they go over the gate. The dog is like, oh, put the brakes on. And that is now a no dog zone of the house. Would you do something like that as a way to protect that safe zone for the cats?
I'll give you two examples. The first example is from decades ago. Well, probably I'll say last year. It was when I was a child, so of course it was last year. We had adult cats, and I of course didn't know it. I know that. And my dad set up, and my dog we got. He loved to eat the cat poo, which is, I mean, it's a very normal thing. Like I like to call it as a chocolate covered Mars ball. Because it's packed in protein, right? And it's like chocolate covered, and people say that. I know, but it's like you get the imagery in your head.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, you deal with babies, and what's the difference?
Lots of poop.
Exactly. And so what Dad did is he created lattice from the outside, from the fence, and he put a hole in the lattice, and the cat could go in the hole versus jumping. Because if you have a cat that jumps, you also have more arousal state.
Oh, that's true.
And so,
though, if you have a small dog, it could go through the hole. So you have to know the size of your dog and know the size of your cat.
Yeah, exactly. So you adapt it to the needs of your animal. And so that's what happened as a kid. And so that's where the dog no longer ate, and they had their own safe room as well. Mm-hmm. So if you want to make where their litter boxes are as a safe room, baby gates are your best friend. And I think I would really recommend that because no one wants to use the bathroom and have a dog be like, oh, what are you doing? Right. So I had a student last year, a dog student who was training, and they are very, very kind people, and they're living in China. I do online training for people in China, and I've done that for 3 years. And they had young kids from, I think, age 5 to about 15, about three kids. And they had 2 adult cats, and one was a rescue cat, so very fearful. And they brought in a Labrador mix. Again, I'm not trying to,
you're not breed bashing. You're not breed bashing, but you are acknowledging characteristics, and that's different. Okay, go ahead.
It's a high prey drive, and the dog was kept in a cage at a vet clinic. And so they were like, either the dog's going to go to a really poor shelter in the location. I was like, okay, I understand that. Or they're going to take the dog in the home. And they were very kind people, but they didn't recognize the behavioral situation that they were doing. And they brought the dog in the home, and chaos ensued because they didn't have baby gates. They didn't have any sort of management tools. They had no training tools. And the dog, because it had lived its life half in a cage and half being abused, was then highly reactive to anything on a walk and highly reactive to anything that moved. And they call me and they're like, what's happened? And I was like, all right, I'll help you. But they were so overwhelmed, and I really feel for them because I think that they took on way more than they could have, understood. And by the end of it, I had like, okay, you need to have baby gates. So what I had is they had stairs going up to like an upstairs and they had a downstairs. The downstairs was the dogs. That's where the dog is going to live. That's going to be like the dog space. The upstairs can be the cat space.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they want to increase that space, they have to have the dog calm.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to take time. And I think, and so we had that baby gate there where, the cats could have the freedom to come down the stairs, but then the dog would get aroused. And what I mean by arousal state, or like a high prey drive state, is that the body posture would stiffen and they get a direct hard stare.
Mm.
And so that's kind of where, even with the baby gate, the dog was still in a prey drive mode.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so with the dog is now then frustrated that they can't access their prey, and you have what's called barrier frustration. And then the dog then took out the barrier frustration on the kids.
Oh, no.
And the dog is mouthing the kids.
Oh, geez. Okay.
So I was like, where do we begin?
Mm-hmm.
And this is online training as well.
Right. Yeah.
So, I love online training. I've had many successful ones, but because they were so overwhelmed, they didn't do their homework.
Yeah.
And when they didn't do their homework, they couldn't help their dog.
Right.
And then they just became this huge cycle. And I think this is the problem as a parent, is you're like, I want to do the right thing. I want to help this dog. I want to help my cats. I want to help my child. Here's a trainer. Can they do this for me? I couldn't. They have to do it. And my goal as a trainer is I teach you how to train your dog. You have to do the homework, right?
Amen. Yep.
And this is the thing they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were so in their minds of, what did I just do?
Yep.
And no matter what I did, like, I supported them on daily, like daily phone calls. And there's nothing more that I could have done.
Right.
And I think if they had lived in another country, the best thing would have been to rehome the dog.
I was going to say, I would like to just point out for all of our listeners that there is no shame, zero shame in acknowledging that perhaps you may have made a mistake and that maybe that dog would be happier somewhere else. I try really hard to acknowledge the pet that was there first gets priority over the pet that you added in. So for example, I don't think it's very ethical to say, okay, well, now we have to get rid of all the cats because the new dog doesn't like them. I think you need to honor your earliest commitment. But I do think that acknowledging that the pet's happiness is often demonstrated through its behavior, and problem behavior is indicating that the dog or cat is not as happy as it could be. And it is okay if in another environment they find that happiness, and it doesn't have to be with you. And you're not a failure if you are unable to provide that, because honestly, you have to get through the day and you have a tolerance level just as everyone does. And as you and I know, like, some people can put up with way more chaos than others. I personally really don't like chaos, and I'm a very structured person. And so for me, every time I have fostered dogs, I've fostered kittens, I've fostered all kinds of things. I have a very predatory dog, but you should have seen, I am the queen of management. So when I brought in kittens, and I actually did this, I don't know if it was during the pandemic. It doesn't feel that long ago, but it was before I got Pippin. So it was over a year ago. I had the room that I'm in now is sort of a guest room, office, whatever, catch-all room. And I had an X pen set up, the tallest one I could find. Mm-hmm. But I discovered in the first 5 minutes that these little stinking kittens could crawl out of the X pen.
Yes.
Which, of course, I mean, come on, who couldn't? They're cats. So then I went and raided some clamps from my husband's tool bench. And what I did is I took an old bed sheet. This was like totally MacGyver, by the way. I was very proud of myself. So I didn't cover, like, enclose the X pen in a sheet, but I made a lid, and then I clamped all around the top of it so that the sheet made a lid and was held on, and it contained the kittens. And then I also had a baby gate on a hallway on the other side of the door. So I had 3 layers of protection. I had a baby gate to the hallway. I had the door to the bedroom. Then I had the X pen that contained the kittens with a lid on it. Yeah. And only then did I feel comfortable having 3 very busy kittens in a house with a predatory dog. But I was ready, and I knew, because of my my experience having cats from a long time ago. I don't anymore. They passed away when they were each 17 years old. And then having a predatory dog, right? So you put all those experiences together and realize what you're capable of doing. But if you're in over your head, it's okay to either ask for help or to undo what you did and just say, you know what? My cats are miserable. And you know more than anyone that a miserable cat does some pretty horrible things like pooping on your bed or doing other things, because cats just kind of do that. They let you know how they feel quite clearly.
Yeah, if a cat is stressed, they will. And I'll give the example a few days ago, because I've had some surgery. My mom's been helping me out clean the cat boxes, which is the most horrible job in the world, and I can't. It's like game on for her. But she did in the morning, and the Marmalade, the little small cat, who's very fearful, couldn't do her morning routine, and because of that stress of that, she felt the only thing that she could do was pee in my bed.
Oh,
and
so
and I was like, all right, game on. I have an enzymatic cleaner. Like, I know what to do. But because cats are such creatures of comfort, you have to keep that predictability for them,
yeah,
especially if they're fearful.
yeah.
And so one thing I want to bring up is, if I know with the pandemic, nobody has any money. And I respect that. Like, we're all very strapped for cash and we're all going through hard times. Go to Cats Protection in UK, and they have lots of introduction videos of how to introduce your dog to your cat and vice versa.
Oh, will you make sure you email me that? I'm going to add that link to our show notes.
I will do, because I think if you need help and you can't afford help, what avenue can you go to? But if you have cats and dogs, you need to have that management. And I like that you brought up that you had a sheet. So a sheet acts as a visual barrier. And so if you have a safe cat room, and that you have a dog in the house, whether it's a high prey drive dog or just a dog, use a sheet to cover the baby gate so the dog can't see it and the cat can kind of have a safe zone.
Mm-hmm.
And when they have a safe zone, then the cat can kind of calm down. Because when a cat has high stress, or what's called the stress hormone is called cortisol. When they have a high cortisol rate in their body, you can have respiratory infections, you can have kidney stones, you can have a whole bunch of physical manifestations in their body, because cats are very, very fickle animals. They're predator and prey. So if they have a long-term stress situation, such as living with a dog that's a high prey drive dog, they're going to get sick. And so then, therefore, you're going against what's called the 5 welfare needs, which is, prevention of injury and suffering to the animal. We need to have animals that can, and part of the 5 welfare needs is to express normal behavior. Well, how can your cat express normal behavior if they can't leave a room?
Oh my gosh, this is so good. Okay, so I want to share one idea that my girlfriend, Stephanie, did for her cats. So Stephanie is unique in that she is a sea lion trainer.
Okay.
And so I've actually learned a ton about dog training from watching her work with sea lions, because you can never force a sea lion to do anything. It has to be their choice, and you need to motivate them to do any behavior that you want them to do.
Yeah.
But she had pet cats. They were indoor only cats, which was really important from a safety perspective. Where she lived, there were predators and there were cars. And so her cats had a limited enrichment opportunity by whatever she provided for them in the house was all they got. And that is really important to think about for most families, because cats get killed constantly by cars, predators, etc. And they, I'm an environmentalist, so I have to say they also are horrible murderers of birds, songbirds, and native rodents and lizards. So I have issues with outdoor cats, but that's a topic for another day. So her cats only lived in the house. And what she did to try to help them have an enriched life, and she was starting to have babies, and she knew that her cat was sensitive. And so she wanted to provide some enrichment opportunities and safety opportunities, is she used the vertical space, like the walls.
Yeah.
And she built little shelves. So like there'd be like a shelf behind, on the wall, and the shelves acted as stairs. So the cat could climb up these shelves. These were not shelves that were meant to hold trinkets. These were specifically like cat stairs. And she made this series of cat stairs on the wall. And then she had she mounted some cat tree type of things, like, like tubes that were carpeted where a cat could go hide in the tube, and boxes and things like that. And so it allowed the cat, oh, hi, kitty. It allowed the cat to escape up out of the reach of the new babies that she was having, right?
Yeah.
And I would think that that would be a really wonderful, also another option for families who had dogs as well, that if the cat could escape up, and then you're taking advantage of the height of your walls and
Definitely.
making stuff for them.
Well, and I think people, again, this is where the cat is natural behaviors. Cats are predator and prey. Cats climb trees. Again, the fireman in the tree. Cats go up high because that will help them feel safe, and they can perch to see the world around them. And when they can perch and see the around them, you actually create a sense of confidence in the cat. So if you have a highly anxious cat or a highly fearful cat, this is why for Marmalade I've created boxes on my dresser and up high, because I have limited how do you say, construction space. I can't do that here.
Mm-hmm.
But I did that so she has a higher space. So when she feels insecure, she can go in the dark closet, or she can go up high, because then that can decrease her anxiety, and she feel confident, and she can peer out. But she can feel that nobody can see her, although I can see her, and she feels that nobody else can see her.
Right.
And so this is where having environmental enrichment is incredibly important. I also have indoor cats due to living in China for 8 years with them. China's not a very safe place for cats or dogs because of a whole different animal welfare challenges that we're not going to get into.
Mm-hmm.
And Calgary's not a very safe place for dogs. I'm in Calgary now because we have predators around us. We have coyotes. We have all sorts of fun stuff. And, I shouldn't, and we also have bylaws against it. We also have extreme weather. We have, like 5 degrees one day and then minus 20 degrees the next day. Because, why not? It's Calgary. So they're indoor cats. But one thing that I do is that, because, I'm also very environmentally centered and, minded, is any sort of stuff that I get, because we've been all ordering online, any boxes I get, well, there we go. We have a box corner now in the house. So it's all theirs, because they need to have their safe spots. And so one thing that I do is I have these little boxes, or I feed them in boxes, I feed them in frisbees. But one thing I want to make sure I do almost every day, and sometimes I don't, but I like to make sure I play with them with a cat wand. And so if you have a child and you have a cat, and the cat's a bit fearful, and the child doesn't know how to play well with the cat, give them a cat wand. Mm-hmm. And then that way you create the distance between the child and the cat. And the cat can still play and think of positive association with the child.
Love that.
And then that way you've created a constructive way that the child can interact with the cat without scaring the cat. And, I bring consent tests into this. I bring all sorts of stuff. But I think, we can get the child involved in the enrichment. So,
and another way you just inspired me is that you were talking about the boxes. And for older kids who are 6, 7 or older, even through teenagers, some of those kids are amazing engineers and love to build things. And I'm imagining building tunnels and tubes and obstacle courses with those cardboard boxes. They could have them taped shut, except for maybe a little hole on each end, and the cat can go in. And so I think that is a really another fun way to involve the kids in helping the cat to feel like it has some safe places to go when it needs a break.
Exactly. And so one thing, the BCSPCA, who is a phenomenal animal welfare organization in British Columbia, they've created a kind of a cat castle where the cat can go inside like one spot, and they can peer out the top of it, and it's all cardboard. And I'll send you a link to it so you can see.
I would love that. Yeah.
But if you have kids, I know as a kid we use all of our books, and we use like blankets. We made forts.
Make forts. Yeah.
As you should. You should do that
Yes.
for any animal.
Yeah.
But if you have all the cardboard boxes, why can't you make a kingdom for your cat? And your cat will love it. But I want to make sure that this is really important, and this is a big issue. Like if you bring a cat tree in, if you bring any sort of toy in for your cat, you need to create positive associations with it. So you need to put catnip on it. You need to put treats around it. The cat's going to be like, well, what the hell is this? Excuse my language. But they're going to go like, you want me to play with that? It doesn't smell like my home.
Okay.
And so again, you have to create this sense of familiarity for the cat. You have to create this sense of comfort. So if you use catnip or you use treats, and the cat's going to go, oh, well, that smells good. Well, because again, dogs and cats are led by their nose. Okay. So if you say, okay, well, that smells really good. Well, I'm going to now interact with that because it smells good. So then you can get your cat and have this positive association with the cat tree. And this is why a lot of cats don't use the cat tree, because it smells of different things, not of their home. And this is why you can get the cat fort or the cat boxes, and you can use the catnip again, or like little toys around it, or even the cat wand around it. And so they can introduce these things that your kid can make.
Right.
But if you have a dog, I want to bring it back into the dog thing. If you have a dog and you want to make the cat fort, please do put it in the cat safe room, so the dog doesn't think that this is something they can destroy.
Yes.
Because a dog will go, oh, that's a cardboard box. Well, I should shred that up, because this is, again, what dogs naturally do. They naturally shred. They're naturally chewers. So you want to put that in the cat room, so then the cat can have their own little castle, and the dog can be like, okay, well, I can see your castle, but I'm not going to eat your castle today.
That's perfect.
Right?
I think that's a good place for us to end this. I feel like we have talked about some ideas that are really important, that dogs repeat what they practice, that we need to reward behavior we want repeated. We need to make sure, from the emotional and physical welfare of all of our pets, to make sure that everyone is safe. And that, for me, means physically and emotionally, right? To make sure that our animals aren't getting sick because of stress, and that they're able to sort of exhibit normal behaviors. I think those are all really important things.
And I also want to bring that it's really important that if you can't handle the situation, if there's no shame in trying to find a trainer. Please do try to find a positive reinforcement trainer, and please message you to try to find somebody in your area, or do online training.
Yes.
And if you feel you can't emotionally handle it, there's no shame in you rehoming your dog, or your, and do respect that the cat came first.
Yeah.
It's the cat's home. It's not the dog's home. And so if you've made that situation, and we've all done things, we look back and say, why did I do that? And you try the best thing with good intentions. So, but there's no shame in saying, I can't handle this anymore. So emotionally, because we're all going through a lot of stress right now. There's a lot of stress in the world, and there's a lot of stress on us. If you feel you're in that situation, please don't feel any shame.
Thank you. I'm glad you reiterated that, because that's sort of my motto, is I just want people to feel safe, because people need to be able to acknowledge the reality and stop pretending that everything is okay if it's not, because if we don't take care of ourselves, then we can't take care of anybody else.
Yeah. And our mental state and our physical state is equally as important as our animals. So if we're not in a good mental state, if we're feeling overwhelmed on a consistent basis, our emotions affect our animals, and that's called emotional contagion. So we have to understand that if we're feeling frustrated, if we're feeling stressed, that we're affecting our animals. And so we have to say, okay, what can I do? And that's where this podcast is coming into play, is you're going to say, what can I do? And then I can listen to this podcast and say, here's some solutions for me.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate your time and your expertise. I love your unique perspective. And please send me your links, and I'll include those in the show notes. And we will talk again soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
If you haven't already, please subscribe to the Pooch Parenting Podcast on iTunes or on the podcast app of your choice. If you're looking for ongoing support for your family with dogs, be sure to get on the waiting list for my Thriving Parents with Kids and Dogs membership at www.safekidsanddogs.com. And don't forget to follow Pooch Parenting on Instagram or Facebook. Thanks for listening.